Today, my guest is Farah Aslam. She's the CEO and co-founder of Maru AI. Farah, welcome. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you.
Please introduce yourself and tell us more about Maru and what you guys do.
Yeah, totally. Like you said, I'm Farah Aslam, the CEO of Maru AI. I have spent all of my career working mostly, actually not all of my career, but most of my career working on the growth side of business. So think sales, marketing, alliances, stuff of that sort. And, I've mostly been focused on software engineering services in particular. So working for consultancies or systems. I've even worked for software companies like Adobe. I have spent a lot of time, I think, in this position where I'm closing deals or my team is closing deals and we're bringing in lots of business, but then the engineering team gets stalled or stuck for some reason. And that's actually why Maru exists today. That's one of the reasons. Maru AI is a tool for software engineering teams in particular that learns from a company's proprietary software development, in particular data. And what it does is it enables engineering teams to boost efficiency, eliminate key person risk, connect data across the globe. So think about those software engineering firms that have people all over the world that are working on one project, and then also make data-driven decisions. Specifically, what Maru is a combination of a whole bunch of microservices, a multi-model approach when it comes to AI. And what it does is it ingests the proprietary data that's relevant to a specific project, and it couples that with platform nuanced knowledge. Like think, since I said Adobe Commerce,
Mhm.
Adobe Experience Manager, SAP Hybris, all of, they call it Commerce now. All of those platforms where you need to have knowledge to actually be able to work on them. So what Maru does is couples that with the proprietary information and then becomes available for those software engineering teams. So not just an engineer, but also project managers, business analysts, could be creative, QA, like anybody who's involved in that project. It's almost like Maru is like a synthetic lead engineer.
Wow.
So the go-to, you know.
hmm hmm So it can create efficiencies across the business beyond engineering. That's
Yeah, I
fantastic.
mean, it's interesting. We have, clients that are actually even outside of engineering. They're using Maru for just, like a knowledge bank that they
hmm
need access to really quickly. Something where you would have a knowledge worker that needs that information. So they need to ask something, ask Maru very quickly. But our ICP is actually in software engineering,
hmm
but it is applicable to many different use cases.
And like you mentioned, you've had a very exciting and very successful career. You've worked at many companies, some large organizations that I'm sure many people have heard of before. And now you're the CEO of a small startup, which is, it's a change of pace and a change of state of mind, change of a lot of things. But what is the formula or the different habits that you've created to be successful in your previous roles that you have now adapted to being the CEO of a small startup?
Yeah. It's interesting because when you're at a large enterprise organization and you're running a deal, or you are maybe managing a team, you still have a budget you need to adhere to. And you still have to be aware of people and the way people interact with each other and what their needs are and what even like what's happening at home. It's still you're managing regardless of if it's because you're running a deal or because you're managing people. And I would say that one thing that's been really successful for me at Maru is taking those skills and moving them forward, but adding a little bit extra inspiration. Because as a CEO, that's what you need to do. You need to inspire your team to do the thing that's good for the company, right? I would say that, when I was working in other roles previously, that was like maybe not as serious of a thing that I needed to do. Of course you want to keep your team inspired. Of course you want to keep them focused and moving in the right direction. And especially if you want to drive really big results. With a startup, it's different because you're limited on resources, you're limited on team, and it's a lot harder. The amount of inspiration that you have to give your team is pretty high compared to when you have backing, you know? So
Hmm.
I would say that those are really maybe the glaring differences between the two. Another one is, I am a sales driven CEO. Some CEOs are product driven or, technology driven or whatever it might be, right? But I am a sales driven CEO. And as a sales driven CEO, one thing that I had to learn is that nobody really knows the Maru brand. We had to do a whole branding exercise. I hadn't done that before for anybody, but maybe a client, not for the company that I worked for. So that was also a learning experience. For example, even with Maru, we did a color study to figure out what colors to use
Hmm.
because, we're in the AI space. I think any space that you're in, it's really important, but in the AI space in particular, it's very, very important because you want to encourage adoption. So if we rolled out with like a bright red, maybe that wouldn't work out
Yeah. Yeah.
at this stage in particular.
Makes sense. Yeah.
So yeah, there was that whole learning, and I would say that that's been different too. Is like really the spark of a concept and growing that into something versus you've got a concept, something like more of a platform to work on, and then you're moving forward. So it has been different for sure.
So as you're going through that exercise, and I imagine you're coming up with different stories you can tell, and the stories probably change depending on, who you're speaking to, each company, and then each title or, potential client within the company. What were those first few stories that you told, and what was it like to get some of those first few customers? I mean, I'm thinking from my own sales experience in startup world, and I'm taking a phrase that someone gave me the other day, but I think it's so true. Your first few customers in startup land is like hand-to-hand combat. Like it's pretty tough, and you have to be quick and agile. But like to your point, when you're coming from large companies that are well established and they're well known, I don't want to say it's easier, but it's different. And then when you are a new technology, a new company that no one's ever heard of, it's a whole new ball game. So can you describe like what the storytelling was like, and then how you got some of these first few customers?
So I'll say that when we won our first customer, the excitement in the room and around the company, it's like you just rang the bell because you went public. That's how you feel,
Yep.
right? Because it's really hard to get
Hmm.
that first customer, like really, really hard. Because you're exactly right. Your story isn't baked yet.
Hmm.
You know what it is that your product does, but communicating that to someone, and I would say that I'm a expert. Like this is my whole career has been built on this communication of a concept or a product or something, or even a person's capabilities, right? When you think about services. And it was really, really hard to nail this down in particular. And I think that we still have a lot of growing to do when it comes to communication of what Maru does. That first rendition of what Maru does is very, very different than what it is today. So when I introduced myself, I talked about four main areas: boost efficiency, eliminate key person risk, connect across the globe, and then make data-driven decisions. One thing that we shifted from the time that we sold or signed on that first customer to now, I'm the main person who pitches Maru, that sells Maru. And I would be talking about Maru and people would be like, I just don't understand. I just don't get what it does exactly. I just kept asking why. Why don't you understand what I'm like? You're asking why don't you get what I'm saying because you're a technologist, so you should. Then I realized that humans' brains work differently. You can tell them what something does, but the truth is you lost them
Hmm.
in the first 2 seconds. They're not listening to the full paragraph that you've created.
Yep.
Definitely not. But what they do want to know is how does this benefit me? So what I did is I flipped the way that I was communicating Maru, and we've seen a massive amount of growth from that switch actually. So now it's how is Maru actually benefiting a team? How is it benefiting maybe that bottom line? What is the customer going to get out of it? So you're actually
Hmm.
talking through what are the benefits versus this is what Maru does. It's almost like what Maru does, it's a later conversation.
Hmm.
You got to lead with this is what you're going to get out of it. And that's actually when I'm pitching Maru, I talk about those four benefits. And then I say, across our customer set today, when you ask Maru a question, you're going to get an average of 4 hours back in your day. And when they hear it,
Beautiful.
they're like, oh, and I say, how much is that worth to you? Or what do you think that would mean across your team? How could you utilize your team differently? I start asking questions and I turn it around on them. Because what I've done now is I've now figured out more information about what they're struggling with. Who cares about me? I want to create a solution that meets the customer where they need me to be.
Hmm.
So I would say that that switch was really impactful for, just getting meetings in the first place, because that was really hard. And I would say that now, from a closing ratio standpoint, it just makes more sense. We're able to close deals faster as a result because it's something that speaks to everybody who's on that team, regardless if you're meeting with the decision maker or maybe a potential user. They all understand those four key benefits.
That's awesome. Yeah. I think when you can break it down into something that's quantifiable, it
Hmm.
makes it that much more obvious for one, but like enticing too.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's funny too. I've seen so many startups not use their own products,
Oh,
like not dog food
yeah.
themselves. And I would imagine, Maru being an engineering focused company increasing productivity and has a sizable team, you would probably be using your product on
Yeah.
a day-to-day basis. Is that where you're able to find the value quickly and come up with some of those key metrics that you can add to your storytelling?
I wouldn't say so. Maybe this is a gap. Actually, you bring something up. We're not really getting metrics from our own usage of Maru, but we are using Maru because it helps us onboard and offboard people. We're
Mm.
a startup, so a lot of times when we're tackling something, we might bring on a consultant that does it because we just don't have, I would say, the backing to be able to bring someone on full time if we're not going to be utilizing them 100%, right? So we will use Maru to help those people get onboarded to Maru really quickly. And it also helps us move a lot faster within the platform that we've built because it's quite complex. All of our stats actually come from the time that we spend with our customers. So the way that we're surveying them right now is that we have 15-minute meetings with all of our customers every single week. Some of
Wow.
them, they say every 2 weeks, but what we try to aim for is every week. Two things happen. The first thing that happens is the customer is able to say, hey, give me some ideas on how to use Maru better. This is how we're using it today. What do you think I can do to drive some efficiency in my team? So it's almost like it becomes a consulting arrangement where we're helping them adopt AI faster and we're helping them find efficiency. And this is one of our big differentiations in for Maru against our competitors, is that this is something that we offer for all of our customers. They don't have to do it if they don't want to, like if they're just too busy. But the truth is if they do, they'll find efficiency and find some time, right? So that's the first thing. The second thing is it allows us to get feedback on the product a lot faster. So we record those meetings, we take those meeting recordings, we suck it up into AI, our own proprietary system that we've created, and then we ask for numbers. So if we've had all of our meetings in that week and 20% of our customers, 30% of our customers are asking about a certain thing, we need to put that in our product roadmap for sure. And what it does is it takes the emotion out of the decision-making process, the way that we prioritize our features and functionality. But when we couple those two together, it just moves much faster. So that's actually an example of how maybe current startups can actually find some efficiency, even if you're not a startup, quite frankly. Like any company is taking the data and using data to actually help you make those decisions. So it takes the emotion out of it. Think about it like this. People who are building and creating and designing, they're artists. They are artists. That's what they are. And so it's really important that you keep them super focused on the target and the goal. Our goal right now is to make sure that all of our customers across the board, that they have an 80% adoption rate across the board. Because for us, making sure that Maru is sticky and that they're utilizing Maru is incredibly important for us for future funding rounds, for the funding round we're in right now. It's important we look to partner with potential partners. They want to know, okay, Maru sounds pretty cool, but are people using it? So it helps accomplish all of that. I always want that. I want to build a customer. Like we've built it, but we're still building. I want to build and make sure we're always customer first. We put customer experience at the most important place in the company.
Hmm.
If we don't put customer first, then why are we doing this? Really?
Exactly. Exactly.
You know?
Yeah, and that brings up a good point. I think a lot of CEOs and not just CEOs, but like C-level people of startups, the way they define growth is different. Some people are defining growth in funding stages. Some, based on revenue or headcount, some customers or product features. When it comes to growth, and what phases are you looking at, and what are like the measuring sticks that you're using to say, okay, here's where we are, here's where we need to be, and this is what it's going to take to get us there.
Yeah. I mean, that is such a good question because it's so different from the enterprise world to a startup.
Hmm.
I just put together our funding deck, and so I'm reviewing everything as I'm doing this, all of the goals and the metrics and everything. It's funny. I'd never actually looked at it all in one place. This was the first time that I was actually looking at everything in one place because I've been very like, I would say short term, like there's a long term goal and we know how we're going to get there, but I'm very hyper focused on short term. Okay, we did that. Short term, we did that.
Hmm.
This was different. I was putting everything together, so it was a combination of all of the short-term goals that we had accomplished over time. And yeah, it changes actually. It's not always about revenue. It's not like,
Hmm.
when we first started this journey, it was about, understanding and curating like our thesis. What are we building here? What are we doing? Right? That was the first thing. Then it was, what's the brand? Right? Like what's the brand next to this and what's the marketing campaign and the go to market? And it's like everything is almost like these mini goals so that you can achieve this much bigger goal. I try to look at things because I feel like for my team in particular, it's a lot more easy for them to work like this, where I state the overall goal quarterly, right?
Hmm.
Like this is what our overall goal is, 3 years, 1 year. Okay. But this is what our goal for the quarter is. And that makes a big difference. And the goal always contains what's happening on the product front. What are we going to build in the product? Are we going to apply a new model or like model in terms of how we prioritize the product? Like, so it's those types of things. Then it's current customers. Current customers. What do we want from our current customers? What do we need? How do we want to service them? Do we want them, to think about us? For example, revenue growth is one thing, but I also I want our customers to be like, that product is amazing. It's the best. Like, I can't live without it. I want them to feel like that and to really believe that and to get that kind of value out of Maru. So that could be one of the goals. And then always last on the list is revenue. And I know that people think this is crazy. Even when I was in the enterprise space and I would do consulting and I would meet with these CEOs and they'd be like, I want to be, $100 million company. Okay, that's not a goal. I'm sorry. It's not a goal. You're not going to achieve it. If your goals are around becoming, 100 million, 200 million, like whatever it is, if it's related to revenue, you've missed the memo. It can't be related to revenue. It has to be related to something that you're bringing to the market, something that you're providing for your customers, a way that you want to be viewed. The best CEOs that I've worked for are the ones that say, I want to be the number one I'm quoting someone right now. I, met with them. I was interviewing with them. I have so much respect for them. He says, I want to be the number one fashion, beauty, lifestyle systems integrator. I want to be the go-to. And I said, okay, now I can do that for you. I can help you do that because it's not related to, I want to be $100 million. Okay, well, what does that mean to you? There's so many ways for that to go wrong actually in the journey, right?
Hmm.
Because everybody has a different way of how they might get to that $100 million. Maybe it's through acquisition. I mean, there's big decisions that have to be made along the way. And unless that CEO is communicating frequently with their team about how they're going to achieve that, it's kind of tough. But if you say, this is what I want, then what you're able to do is say this to your partners. You're able to say this to your customers. You're able to say it to everybody. Actually, for that one company, I remember I was in Brazil. We're on this giant pitch and I kept saying it over and over again. We're the number one fashion and beauty lifestyle company in the world. I kept saying it over and over again. And when they gave us the verbal, it was a team of like 19 people that were there on their side. When they gave us the verbal, they were like the one guy who was like owning the steering committee. He says it's because you guys are the number one beauty, fashion, lifestyle company on the planet. That's what he said. And it
Hmm.
was so funny because that's what we wanted. And you know what? That's what the company achieved. I mean, I don't know if they would be considered that now because the market has changed, but during that time, they were considered the go-to, the number one. And when you're creating goals and you have your measuring stick, those are the types of things you should be doing because the revenue will come. The revenue is a conversation that you need to have with your CFO, you know?
Yeah, revenue is a lagging indicator.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's very important. People, it's required to run a business, but it really is not the most important thing. To your point, if you're delivering a solid product that the market wants and customers love it and use it, revenue will come.
Yeah, totally.
In terms of the goals that you set out for the company from a business development standpoint, what do you think are the most important things that you can do? Well, not just from a business development, but starting with business development and then the rest of the team. What are the most important things that you think you can do and then the team can do and their regular core responsibilities to achieve those goals?
Yeah, I mean, that's also a really good question because you're right. It's not just business development, it's across the entire company. You know, we're not a super massive team. I think this is indicative of most startups is that like you have a small team, you have limited resources. You guys got to stay hyper focused on whatever the goal is, and it has to be restated frequently so that people don't forget this is why I'm doing this, or at the beginning of the week I'm prioritizing my workload for the week like this because this is our company goal. I would say on from a business development standpoint, you know, and this goes for a company that is small or big, it doesn't really matter. You have to be flexible. You
Mm-hmm.
have to be able to think outside of the box and be super goal oriented. One thing that I've said is like, be like an octopus. Really, be like an octopus, right? Like you got all these different, tentacles that are out there. You got to use all of them. You can't just focus on one. You have to be able to like really spread out and state what your goals are, state them inside, outside, make sure that everybody knows this is what I'm looking to do. And this is what I do when I meet with partners. I say to them, our goals this quarter are X, Y, and Z, because I want them to know this is what I'm going to achieve. I would love it if you could help me, like I'd be grateful forever. Same thing internally is restating it. And I think that it doesn't matter what part of the company that you're in. That's the way in startup that you have to think. You have to really think like an octopus.
I love that. I'm going to start using that. In terms of what you're doing, and I do want to bring this back to business development because you are such a sales minded CEO and this has been your career. But what do you think are some of the things that you can do most effectively to start those cold conversations? Like if you're not, leaning on your network or getting referrals, if you're just going
Yeah.
out cold to the market, what are some of your favorite tactics, knowing, your company size and team size? And then maybe what are some of the other tactics or channels that you might save for later down the road?
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is a really good tool for B2B in particular.
Hmm.
If you're in the B2B space, I think using social is huge. I think that depending on what type of market you're in, the influencer network and influencer marketing, I believe is going to be probably the key and the most important type of marketing that we're going to see, right? I don't know what the numbers are, but you definitely see a lot of technology moving towards leveraging influencer marketing. For us in particular, I mean, we utilize LinkedIn a lot. We try to, garner as many followers as possible. We try to, make sure that we're, honing in on what, who's our ICP and I want to connect with them. I want to have a conversation with them. It's interesting. It takes a lot of courage to do that. It takes a lot of courage. Most people don't even want to send a message. They feel nervous about it. It's different for me because I'm sales minded. I don't feel like I have maybe such nervousness around reaching out to people, but I think that a lot of startup CEOs in particular, they have a lot of nervousness around this. There's a couple rules to get over it. It's like, if you don't do it, your competitor is going to do it. So just do it. That's the first thing. The second thing is, every time you talk to somebody, every time you communicate with somebody, you need to ask them to help you achieve your goal one way or another. It's either they're going to buy from you, they're going to introduce you to someone else, or they're going to tell you to go away.
Yeah.
And if you can be like, okay, get that in your brain, that's the way that you have to operate, then you will become a little machine in terms of outbound and, trying to get leads. You have to understand who your ICP is. You really do. I mean, it really starts there. If you don't understand who it is, then it's going to be tough. One thing that we learned along the way, our buyer is very technical, and it's really hard to sell to technical people. They tend to be like, oh, I don't know. I don't really want to change anything that I'm doing right now. We're very busy. I'm not sure. Then I realized that if I could spin it in a way where a sales or marketing person who is probably compensated on whether or not that project delivers, if I could spin it in a way where they would make the introduction, then maybe that would be more successful. And I tried it and it worked.
Hmm.
It's that same concept. Think like an octopus.
Yeah.
It is. It's like, just do whatever you can do.
Yep.
Sit down, have those strategy sessions, hopefully with someone else, not just you. Sometimes it's just you, right?
Mhm.
But have those strategy sessions and talk about, okay, what could I do? What should I be doing? How can I get to that person? That person's not responding. How do I get to them? Use LinkedIn. Look at who they report to. Look at who, is on their team. Maybe you can have conversations with people on their team and get them singing your praise. There's many different things that you can do. Think like an octopus.
Definitely. And since you are the CEO of an AI company and this is kind of an AI related podcast, what do you think about AI as a part of business development and sourcing leads? Or is this something that you're looking to implement? Do you have any AI tools right now helping you?
We're heavy, heavy AI, probably about, I want to say 9 months ago. And it was okay. It wasn't as great as I thought it was going to be, for sure. And this is my perspective across technology as a whole. It doesn't matter if it's AI or what it is. If you really want adoption and you want results, you have to marry three things together. And I know this sounds very corporate, but I really believe this. People, platform, and process. Those three things have to be married together and working very well together to be, you know, really what you dream it to be. It has to be. For example, when you're using AI tools, you can't really just set it on auto. You have to interact. You have to change your messaging up. You have to maybe change the person that you're outbounding to up a little bit. You have to do the thinking that's required to actually get into the account, process. Okay, well, if you have to change things up, you need to put in your process that you revisit that many times. You have to have a clear process. What happens when you do drive a lead? What happens? Who's going to take it? Who's going to reach out to that person and actually get on the phone with them? You need to have all that baked. It's really, really hard to put that together. So last year, I spent a whole bunch of time on the side doing some consulting services for companies, quite a few AI startups, actually. I mean, they're humming along now, but it's interesting because a lot of folks that are in the tech space, they're not sales-driven CEOs. They're just not. They're tech-driven CEOs. And it's super expensive to hire a salesperson or somebody who knows how to put the go-to-market together. There was one CEO actually that I worked with, and he said, well, I'm going to sell to this group. And I was thinking they're never going to buy from you. And I was gracefully like, these are what your potential blockers are. How do you expect to get through those? Is there another sales channel that you could use? I just asked him a bunch of questions, He tried his original approach and went through a lot of investor money as a result. And then he ended up flipping over to the approach that I had recommended to him. And he's humming along now. He's actually closing deals. He's got really big enterprise customers. I'm so proud of him because thought like an octopus. That's what he did. He like
Mm-hmm.
went from one thing, okay, that's not working, and he quickly corrected, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah.
I think it's important that you're flexible and that you get over any challenges you might have in your own head because you probably just are painting them yourself. Like they probably don't even exist.
Yeah.
No. And I think it's good to ask your network for help if you need it.
Yeah, definitely lean on your network and don't be afraid to test also. Like test, test, test. It's okay to fail, learn from your mistakes and get back out there and try again. Failing fast is something I think it's challenging for people, especially non-sales minded people to learn.
Yeah,
Um,
sales-minded people, you just always failing fast. Like
yeah.
seriously, like the amount of like for sales, like, no, I'm not interested. Okay. That's a fail fast. That's what it is.
Mhm.
Okay, now you can shift something to either try and continue to sell to that person or maybe you move on to something else because that person will never buy, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Well, last question for you, Farah. In terms of what you're hoping to see happen at Maru in the next 6 to 12 months, what are the top three things you're hoping for?
Top three things. That 80% adoption rate is pretty big for me, right?
Hmm.
I want to make sure that we're bringing our customers on and that they really see value. I mean, that's a clear indication of them believing that Maru is valuable for their organization. The next thing is from a sales perspective, our goal is to be closing 10 deals per month. So that means that there's a lot of team growth that has to happen for sure.
Hmm.
And then overall for the team, I want to make sure that we have the process in place to be moving at a faster rate in a happy way.
Yeah.
Like this is a thing. And it doesn't matter if you're a giant company or a small company, but I want to make sure that nobody's feeling massive anxiety to perform, that they realize that it's okay. We could just keep moving forward, but we're doing it in a really healthy way. I think that those indicators for me personally, that's like a really big, I'm working a lot on that actually, like talking to the team, trying to make sure we have the process in place, make sure that they're using technology appropriately. Like when you talked about AI for business development, right? Make sure that we have those things in place, that we're tying it all together. That is very hard to orchestrate. That's one of my big personal goals for the company.
That's awesome. You have a winning formula as you've shown in your previous positions. Well, Farah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. If anyone wants to reach out to you or learn more about Maru, how can they find you?
Yeah, so my email address is Farah, F as in Frank, ARAH, at Maru, MARU, .ai.
Beautiful. Hopefully people will hear this and reach out.
Yeah, totally. Thank you.
Thank you so much.